I am about to read for you is a reading from physicist Marcelo Gleiser. This is an excerpt from his 2019 appearance on the podcast On Being, in an episode entitled The Mystery We Are. Science is not so much about finding all of the answers, but actually courting the mystery. Once you adopt that there is only one way of understanding the complexity of things, you are just emptying humanity of its value. You know, the plurality of visions. And so yes, science is powerful. I love it, I do it. But there are other ways of knowing. And to say that there is only one way of understanding is just silly, to be honest. It's impoverishing the richness of human culture.
Since our story today was about a unicorn, we thought it best to balance it with some science. And so I'll start here by talking a little bit about science. First, I just need to make sure that we're all familiar with some basic scientific concepts, if that's okay. We all know quantum mechanics, right? Right? Yeah, we got that one. And we're all familiar with Einstein's theory of relativity. That's nothing, that's easy. We know that one. We can't forget string theory, right? Of course not. Of course not. The truth is, I'm not a scientist. This stuff is fascinating, but I don't actually understand all of it. And I'm sure that there's someone either in this room or even in this congregation who can teach me. I know we do have a lot of scientists involved here. But one thing I do understand is that quantum mechanics and the theory of relativity and string theory and a bunch of other scientific theories have all been used in physicists' searches to find what they call a theory of everything. A theory of everything. One unified scientific theory that can explain how everything works. One unified scientific theory that can explain why things happen the way that they do. These have all been efforts at finding one solid truth with a capital T. One truth that will always be true, no matter where you are, who you are, when you are. Einstein himself spent years chasing a theory that worked like this, a theory of everything, and it proved to be more elusive than he anticipated. He even lamented the fact that everyone who studied under him, everyone he worked with in this pursuit of a theory of everything, according to him, quote, ended up very young in the graveyard of disappointed hopes. End quote. Apparently Einstein was still puzzling over nailing down a unifying theory while he was on his deathbed. He's not the only one who's been stumped by this. Scientist after scientist, from Stephen Hawking to the physicist that we heard from in our reading earlier, scientist after scientist has tried and tried to discover a theory of everything. In the mid-20th century, people thought they'd found it with what they called the Standard Model. But the Standard Model was a theory that wasn't able to account for the force of gravity, and so it became known as the theory of almost everything. But scientist after scientist has learned that a theory of everything will be an impossible endeavor, they say. A theory of everything will never be within reach, they say. Because human descriptions of reality are always going to be incomplete. We simply cannot know everything. And that's kind of annoying, right? But at the same time, it's kind of cool and exciting, right? In Unitarian Universalism, we love science. We love it. I don't think I've met another UU who does not have a strong appreciation for the field of science. And here is yet another opportunity for us to learn from what science has to offer. If we really think about it, science's story about this quest for a theory of everything points to something really profound and important about truth. We simply cannot know everything. We simply cannot, no matter how we try, uncover one all-encompassing truth with a capital T. Just as a quest for the theory of everything has proved to be impossible, quantum mechanics fails when applied to matters of relativity, relativity fails when applied to matters of quantum mechanics, gravity throws a wrench into the standard model. Perhaps the same can be said for truth in a lot of ways. Perhaps there is no one model for seeking truth that always works 100% and applies to everything. I want to be clear here, though, when I talk about truth. I'm not talking about facts. I do believe that there can be a shared understanding of reality. I am in this room, you are in this room, that is reality. And nowadays, the internet and a lot of the harmful rhetoric perpetuated by false claims and rewriting history to serve the interests of people in power, with all of that, it's become more and more important for us to be able to weed out the things that are not true. To weed out lies, to weed out propaganda, to use our Unitarian Universalist principles and values as guideposts in our quest for truth and understanding. And we must also acknowledge that we as individuals, we don't have the full truth with a capital T. We hold only one part of the unicorn. And we have so much to learn about the world by listening to others authentically share what rings true to them, by listening to them talk about what part of the unicorn they hold. Racial justice activist and author, Dr. Tema Okun, has become widely known for her work naming what she refers to as characteristics of white supremacy culture. It's this list of ideas and practices and attitudes ingrained in our society that serve to uphold and replicate a culture of white supremacy, even if we don't realize it. And a lot of them you wouldn't expect her to name as being related to white supremacy. One of these characteristics of white supremacy culture that Okun names is objectivity. She says that objectivity is a characteristic of white supremacy culture. And she describes what she means by objectivity in the following ways. She says, objectivity shows up as the belief that there is such a thing as being objective or neutral. And she uses these quotes. If you see me do air quotes, it's because Okun's using them. Objectivity to Okun is the belief that emotions are inherently destructive, irrational, and should not play a role in decision-making or in group process. It's assigning value to the rational while invalidating or shaming the emotional, when often, if not always, the rational is emotion wrapped in fancy logic and language. It's requiring people to think in a linear or a logical fashion and ignoring or validating or shaming those who think in other ways. It's impatience with any thinking that does not appear logical or rational in ways that reinforce existing power structures. It's refusal to acknowledge the ways in which logical thinking and or decision-making is often a cover for personal emotions and agendas, and it's often based in fear of losing power, losing face, or losing comfort. And it's a refusal to acknowledge the ways in which objectivity is used to protect power and the status quo. That was a lot. So if you would like to read through those again, I welcome you to search for Tama Oken's work. It's easy to find on the internet. All of this valuing of objectivity, to use her air quotes, all of this helps to feed white supremacy culture, helps to replicate harmful power structures. I gotta admit, it's really hard to grapple with this though, right? It's hard. Since the age of enlightenment, it's been pretty popular for many of us in our culture to consider reason and rationality and logic as our own theory of everything when it comes to truth. This idea that reason and rationality and logic can lead us to one objective truth. But if we remember what scientists tell us, scientists like Marcelo Gleiser, the physicist in our reading this morning, if we remember what scientists tell us, human descriptions of reality are always going to be incomplete. The truth that we as individuals may see as the objective truth, that's likely not the whole picture. Reason and rationality and logic, that might be a useful part of the picture, just like quantum mechanics. But perhaps they don't apply when truth is also provided by emotion or feelings. Perhaps it's just like how quantum mechanics doesn't apply in matters of relativity. Perhaps we can't see how the ways that we use reason and rationality and logic to make a claim about what is true, perhaps we can't see how that might be shaped by our own context and beliefs and desires and biases. Many experts in fields of psychology and spirituality emphasize that there are actually multiple centers of intelligence. There's the mind, there's the heart, and there's the body. The mind, the heart, and the body, all offering real and valuable ways of knowing. All acting as real and valuable sources of truth. And these centers of intelligence, the mind, the heart, and the body, they're so intimately connected to each other in amazing and mysterious ways. But in our context here in the US, we're taught to prioritize the mind, right? To prioritize thinking. to prioritize what we consider to be rational. We're taught to devalue everything else. We're taught that the mind and intellect, that's what's most important. But perhaps, my friends, perhaps none of these alone, not only the mind, not only the heart, not only the body, perhaps none of these alone can serve as a theory of everything. Perhaps they need each other to better understand what is true, with an acknowledgement that there are times when no one thing can be true for everyone, no matter how objective we think that truth is. Dear ones, I think this can be especially difficult in Unitarian Universalism, where our faith strives to be a home for everyone who shares our values. But shared values don't necessarily translate to shared truths. And we need to think about how to intentionally make room for that, how to intentionally hold community around that. No one teaches you this. Maybe you hear yourself in one of these statements. I came to this church because I am looking for a community where discussing big questions from an atheist's perspective is welcome. I came to this church because the values of this faith are a part of God. I came to this church because it enlivens my spirit and makes room for my spiritual journey. I came to this church because I grew up in a church that harmed me, and I'm looking for healing. I came to this church because I'm in an interfaith marriage, and I want to be able to worship together as a family. I came to this church because I was looking for a place to help me raise my kids to be good people. I came to this church because social justice is a spiritual responsibility. I don't know why I'm here, but this church has something I'm looking for. All of these worldviews lay the foundation for different understandings of what is true, right? And none of them are going to fit into a theory of everything. Let's keep going. Perhaps you hear yourself in one of these truths. Religion is divisive. Religion is unifying. The civil rights movement was a religious movement. Religion is a category defined and weaponized by Western colonialism. Religion brings depth, breadth, and height to the human experience. The word God has too much baggage. Nobody means the same thing when they're talking about God. The God I hear about from Christian nationalists and fundamentalists is not the God I know and love. There is no God. God is love. All of these are truths, many of which are likely held by people in this room. People who walk through the doors of UU churches every week, churches just like ours, they hold many variations of these truths. and they are justified, and they are valid, none more valid than the others. And none of these truths fit into a theory of everything. All of them are products of different contexts, different viewpoints, different ways of making meaning in the world, different definitions of words, different ways that our brains and our hearts and our bodies work together. None of them have the whole picture. And isn't that our call as a community to intentionally make space for those truths that may look different from our own, even if it feels a little uncomfortable? Even if we have trouble seeing past what we just know to be true. Let us be open to acknowledging that our individual experience of truth cannot be a theory of everything. Let us hold our part of the unicorn lightly. Let us, to use Marcelo Gleiser's words, let us court the mystery. And let us bring with us curiosity and wonder on this journey together. May it be so, and amen.